Welcome, everybody, to the NFL Show on the Grizzly True Sports Network. The NFL Show is brought to you by Replenishing Care and Technologies. Make sure you check them out at rcandt.com. I am your host for the NFL Show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, Sam Teets. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing great, Mike. How about you?
All right, today we have a Monday night football game to review, a Tuesday night football game to preview, and then we'll talk a little NFL news, but we're going to start off with the New Orleans Saints, a 30-27 winner over the Los Angeles Chargers. The Saints really didn't arrive till shortly before halftime when Drew Brees and the Saints awoke from their slumber. A dormant offense and a rookie-ravaged defense had fallen behind by 17 points, and it offered no counter to that point. Then Brees bounded into action, executed a 2-minute drill to showcase the poise and efficiency that had been the hallmark of his Hall of Fame career. And the Saints come back and win this game 30-27. Another game that the Chargers let get away. Now the Chargers are 1-4. The Saints are sitting pretty good right now, though, in their division.
Yeah, they're doing all right. And Tampa Bay's had their own troubles. They lost to Chicago this week. So the Saints are still holding on there. And really, like I said, Drew Brees, to the point, he looked asleep almost in the first quarter of the game, even through most of the first two quarters. To the point where someone texted me asking me if I thought Drew Brees was washed up. And the answer is I don't necessarily think that. And we saw it in the second half. We saw it even before halftime. He's still capable of running the 2-minute drill and pulling his team through some tough situations. And really, they came back against the Chargers. All credit to them for that. But Justin Herbert had another pretty good game. He had some missed throws every now and then that really came out and kind of hurt them in the long run. But at the same point, you got to be optimistic if you're a Chargers fan moving forward with Justin Herbert.
Right, and Herbert threw 3 touchdown passes in the opening half, went kind of ice cold in the second half, though. But like you said, they're already missing Derwin James. I think there is hope for the future of the franchise in Los Angeles.
Yeah, you didn't have Keenan Allen for most of last night, too, so you're missing your top receiver as well. And you get no Austin Eckler, your top running back wasn't there. And still, you came within 3 points of beating the Saints. They had to go to overtime. And Herbert, well, I say he's made some missed throws. He didn't throw an interception. It wasn't like he's turning the ball over a lot. I mean, he's playing, I wouldn't say phenomenal football, but he's playing very high-level football, especially compared to what I expected from him as a rookie.
All right, then we had Taysom Hill, who, you know, you've always got these people that are screaming that he should be the next starting quarterback for the Saints. And he took a quarterback sweep 9 yards for a touchdown. These people overlook the first quarter, in which he threw a duck of an incompletion, and he followed that on an ensuing play by dropping a pass from the resident franchise quarterback. So I don't think Taysom Hill is the answer there in the future. And it gets really old listening to people say that maybe he is.
No, that's the most tiring thing I've ever heard. I don't know what Sean Payton's obsession is with Taysom Hill. I mean, we saw earlier this year, you put Taysom Hill in, and you let him carry the football, and he fumbled, and he basically fumbled away a game for the Saints. You should have had Drew Brees in there. You should have turned around and handed it off to Alvin Kamara. Putting this emphasis on Taysom Hill is not healthy for the Saints. It really doesn't do much for them. And frankly, if we're talking about quarterbacks in New Orleans, Hill's the third best one. Jameis Winston. I would much rather have him over Taysom Hill because I know Jameis Winston can throw the football.
Yeah, and when you look at the Saints, Michael Thomas was absent again for a 4th straight week. Emmanuel Sanders emerged as the interim number 1 and a potential number 2 when Thomas does return. So I think the Saints team is still a 11 or 12 win team, especially when they get Michael Thomas back, combining him with Emmanuel Sanders, Alvin Kamara. This is a team that's a Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, it took them a little while to get to this point, though, because Emmanuel Sanders was not playing well for the first couple weeks of the year. He really came alive last night, obviously. The defense, though, has been struggling. It's been surprising. So they have a lot of brand-name players back there. But Marshall and Lattimore has been struggling to cover number 1s for other teams. He's been beat up, actually, quite a bit by even some number 2 receivers. They haven't gotten as much of a pass rush this year as I expected. And that secondary, which has a bunch of guys who I thought were going to do really well, they've been struggling quite a bit.
All right, let's go ahead and look at tonight's Tuesday night football game. We actually get the Buffalo Bills and Tennessee Titans. And I've always said, Sam, the Tuesday night games are always better than the Thursday night games.
I mean, look, this will be better than any Thursday night game we'll have the entire season.
Yeah, wouldn't take much. All right, so I think the biggest question coming into tonight's game with 2 undefeated teams, this is a huge game, is how sharp will the Titans be? They had a game canceled due to an outbreak of a deadly global virus inside a team facility. That's not your typical bye week in the NFL, but it's kind of the new world that we do live in. And we've seen the effect that COVID-19 has had on football as a whole so far this year at every level. And in the NFL, teams weren't as tuned in to start the season due to no preseason, an abbreviated training camp. Players have opted out. Tackling has been horrendous. Should be potent offenses have started out the season a little stale at times. So how will a team miss or handle missing practice for the last 11 days, Sam?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So I think we saw early in the year, the first week of football wasn't as bad as we expected. But part of that maybe is because the referees are officiating the games a little bit differently this year. I don't know. Really, I don't think Tennessee's going to have a huge problem. They're fairly straightforward what they've done. They're fairly well coached as well. They're running pretty much a similar offense to what they did last year. They've got most of their players back. So I would assume they're going to come out and play somewhat consistently. But I have to admit, if you haven't had a real full-scale practice in 2 weeks, that's got to throw you off a little bit, right?
Yeah, and during the unexpected break, Mike Vrabel, the head coach for the Titans, stressed to his team and staff to put Buffalo on the back burner. He emphasized getting his players healthy and for everyone to be mentally reset from what was surely an emotionally and exhausting week. Instead, players met at a private Nashville high school to hold player-only workouts, which was a direct violation of the NFL's COVID-related protocols.
Yeah, there have been rumors there are going to be punishments for that. I don't really know what's going on in that situation. It's been quiet for a little while now. Who knows how it was communicated to players about whether they should or should not meet up. But at the same point, that's probably why this is extended to 2 weeks, really. I mean, it was supposed to be done. They're supposed to be in the clear almost. There was talk of having Pittsburgh play Tennessee on Monday night last week, and that got pushed back because of situations where this kept having new positive tests. So having that private meeting certainly did not help the situation.
Yeah, when you look at the Titans, they could be out with some key players this week. Corey Davis, Adam Humphries, Jeffrey Simons, Daquan Jones, Fulton, Correa. The list goes on here. And I think the potential losses of Davis, Humphries, Simons, and Jones would be the most notable for Tennessee coming into this game.
Yeah, they're not healthy, which is surprising considering they had basically 2 weeks off. But they're not fully prepared. They're not fully healthy. They've had shortened, I guess you could say, schedule because they haven't had the practices. So I don't think there's a way they can win this game. I know maybe if they run the ball with Derrick Henry and they just grind out 200 yards on the ground, there's a potential there always. But I have to lean heavily towards Buffalo in the situation because Tennessee looks like they have so much going against them right now.
Yeah, and I think the other big story here is to watch, once again, the development of Josh Allen tonight. Josh Allen now is a guy whose name is being involved with Russell Wilson in MVP conversation, and his numbers this year so far are brilliant. 12 touchdowns against just one interception, 70% completion rate, 330 yards per game, a passer rating of 122.7. And up until a couple weeks ago on this show, there was a guy that didn't think he was any good.
Yeah, who the heck was that guy? We shouldn't invite him back who doesn't know anything about football. But really,
I'll invite him back. Hey, Sam Teets is here. Sam, go ahead.
No, I mean, yeah, he could be playing football at a phenomenal level right now. He's proved me wrong. It's probably one of the worst things I've ever been wrong about when it comes to football. And there's been quite a bit of things I've been wrong about. But really, he's playing great. So far, I mean, the teams he played against, they played the Rams. That was a very difficult game. They played the Raiders. The Raiders are kind of proving that they're for real so far this year. And they played the Miami Jets. So they have played two decent teams so far. I think the Tennessee Titans will probably be the best team they face this year. It'll be interesting to see how performance, but I have high expectations for him now.
All right, so the other big question to me, and this has a lot to do with whether Buffalo is a Super Bowl team or not, is the Bills' defense back. Now, the last few years, Buffalo's defense has been elite, oftentimes carrying an anemic offense. And in 2018, the Bills were second in the league in total defense, giving up only 294 yards per game. Last year, they were the best in the game in scoring defense, giving up 14 points a game. This season's been a little different, though, so far, Sam.
Yeah, we said giving up, I forget how many yards you said, but they're giving up 381 yards per game right now. It's almost 100 more yards than what they were doing last year. And as far as scoring goes, they're giving up about 25 points per game. They're ranked in the bottom half of the NFL in both those categories. So really, this has been an issue for Buffalo. And it's surprising because Buffalo was a very good team last year. Like you said about defense, that was phenomenal for them. That's what carried them. Josh Allen's having difficulties. But now that the offense is finally clicking, it's the defense that has problems. It's really, I guess you could say, disappointing if you're a Bills fan because you were expecting to have a complete team or hoping to have a complete team. And now you're looking at a situation where maybe that defense is not Super Bowl caliber anymore.
All right, let's move on to who are you picking tonight? You got the Bills?
Yeah, I'm taking the Bills. I think Josh Allen's just too hot right now, and there's some questions with Tennessee.
Yeah, I just think the Bills are a better team. Not by a lot, though. I think the Tennessee Titans are very good. I just think a week and a half off, not so much just a week and a half off, but why that week and a half off and a lot of distractions there. I think Buffalo wins this game by a touchdown. All right, let's talk a little Dwayne Haskins, because the rumors out of Washington, D.C. right now are that Haskins may be traded. My question to you is there anybody wanting?
I really don't know, but the question was, did anyone want Josh Rosen? Like, was it last offseason, last year when he got traded? Would anyone want Josh Rosen? Would anyone want Dwayne Haskins? Well, Josh Rosen got traded to Miami for a second and fifth round pick. If you're Washington and you get a second and fifth round pick for Dwayne Haskins, I mean, I would absolutely go for that. The question is, like you said, will some team do it? There are some teams out there that are needy. They're hoping they find a young quarterback they're able to build upon and maybe become a successor. So maybe there's some teams that are desperately go for Haskins, but really I don't view him as that kind of player. I think we learned from the Josh Rosen situation. That's probably not a smart way to go about business to begin with.
Well, when I look at it, I don't see how you could get better than a fourth-round pick for him, and I think any team that gives up a fourth-round pick would be nuts. The one thing that you will see about Haskins is this. People will say, well, he's played under two different coaches and two different offensive schemes, but the problem here is this. These are not similar schemes. You know, Ron Rivera, Gruden are two entirely different types of coaches, and he's failed with both of them. And people forget the NFL is a closed circle. So if I'm the insert team name and I'm looking at getting a quarterback and I want to find out about Dwayne Haskins, I'm going to call around to the guys that have coached him, guys like Jay Gruden. And remember, Jay Gruden is well documented, did not want Washington to take Haskins in the draft. So it's almost certain that the former Washington head coach will not have a lot of positive things to say about Haskins. And the thing is, it looks to me like it's maybe not even his performance on the field that took him out of being the starter, but it was kind of the fact that he can't really lead his team. I mean, because Rivera cited the team's poor division and the importance of Washington's next few games, and that's why he made the move to Kyle Allen. He didn't even really talk about the way the offense or the way Haskins was playing. He cited the team's poor division. To me, that calls into question whether Dwayne Haskins can be a leader or not.
It's not just the leadership, it's the work ethic. So maybe how you lead on the field. I've heard some questions that maybe he's not as focused as he should be. Maybe he's not picking up the game as quickly as he should be. And he's kind of lagging behind the rest of his team. Of course, that's disappointing. But like you said, if Jay Gruden didn't want him there to begin with, and you still got him in this place, in this situation now where you have Kyle Allen, who has history with Ron Rivera, where you have Alex Smith, who's a former Pro Bowler, and working his way back from a gruesome injury. Really, he's at a huge disadvantage here. I think he probably would welcome a trade just from the fact that he needs a fresh start probably. If he will get one, I don't really know. But Haskins seems to be short for his time in Washington. I think we expect this to some degree, but maybe not this soon.
I did.
Do you think it's like
it surprised me he made it through a year. I'm not real impressed with Dwayne Haskins. Never have been.
No, I think we saw some of that last year. Last year he struggled quite a bit. But let me ask you this. Is it fair to bench a quarterback 4 years into his second season for someone like Kyle Allen? Do you think that makes sense, or should you have given him a couple more weeks to see if he could develop into anything?
To tell you the truth, I don't think it makes any sense to have Kyle Allen on an NFL roster, but it doesn't make any sense to have Dwayne Haskins on one either. I mean, to me, you go with Alex Smith, hope he's got something left, and try to find a quarterback in the meantime. But Dwayne Haskins is not that guy, and it doesn't matter how many chances you give him. It doesn't matter who you bench him for. He is not an NFL quarterback. He's nowhere near an NFL quarterback. He never has been, and he never will be.
Let me ask you this. I think Ron Rivera came out and said that Kyle Allen is going to be the starting for the next week. Does that make any sense to you? We talked about Alex Smith. Obviously, he kind of had a rebaptism by fire this past week against Aaron Donald. But does it make sense to have Kyle Allen go in there ahead of Alex Smith? Because really, I think Alex Smith has the higher ceiling in this situation.
Well, I don't know if he has a higher ceiling. I think that maybe you just got to trust Ron Rivera here. He's seen the guys in practice. Alex Smith's coming up a long layoff after a horrendous injury. So maybe he thinks that Kyle Allen can keep the game close, and then they'll bench him and bring in, the eventual comeback player of the year. And they don't have a quarterback in Washington. They just don't. I mean, Alex Smith, a few years ago before the injury, was a really good quarterback. We don't know if that's still the case. But Kyle Allen, I could say the same thing, the exact same thing I said about Dwayne Haskins, I could say about Kyle Allen. He's not an NFL quarterback. He never was, and he never will be. Not an NFL starter.
Which should make you question why Washington didn't go after someone like Andy Dalton, who's now starting in Dallas, or maybe even like a Jameis Winston. These guys who are now backups, who have been starters in the past. Obviously, they're not superstar quarterbacks, but they would have been better than anyone that's on Washington's roster right now.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, when you look at Andy Dalton and what Andy Dalton did in Cincinnati, why weren't a lot of teams going after him? I mean, if I was the Denver Broncos, I'd have went after him. I don't see why anybody thinks Drew Lock's going to be anything great. And really, every team in the NFL should have went after Andy Dalton. Now, I'll rip Jerry Jones all day for all the stupid, boneheaded things he does. But right now, him signing Andy Dalton is the only thing saving the Cowboys season right now. That and the fact that they're in the NFC East. Because if they didn't have Andy Dalton, where would they be? And if you look at New England, I would have signed Andy Dalton and Cam Newton. Hell, you'd have had a backup then. I mean, you need at least a backup quarterback that could get something done if your starter goes down. I mean, in Kansas City, who's the backup quarterback?
Chad Henne.
Yeah. Okay. Las Vegas, who's the backup?
That's got to be Marcus Mariota.
Okay. So you see where I'm going with this, right? The Pittsburgh Steelers, who's the backup?
Oh, Mason Rudolph.
So to me, and I said it last year, the team that made the most sense for Andy Dalton was the Pittsburgh Steelers. You got Big Ben. He's up there in age. So even if he only lasts 2 more years, Andy Dalton could come in after him. Andy Dalton's not 36 years old. And if something happens to Big Ben this year, and all of a sudden Mason Rudolph's the quarterback, then all of a sudden you're back to being a 500 team. So the fact that nobody went after Andy Dalton tells me one simple thing. Most of these guys don't know anything. I mean, most of this is nepotism. I mean, you look, who's the I mean, you get all kind of offensive coordinators, defensive coaches, and everything else that are there because their daddy's the head coach. So when I look at that, I mean, in Indianapolis, you cannot tell me Phillip Rivers would have gave you a better chance to win than Andy Dalton.
Phillip Rivers would not have given you a better chance than Cam Newton, Andy Dalton, or Jameis Winston. And all those guys were free agents for a while or even backups entering this year.
Yeah, and the thing is, with Jameis Winston, yeah, he throws a lot of interceptions, but he throws a lot of touchdown passes too. So to me, if I'm a coach and I think I can coach, maybe I give that a shot and see if I can fix that. Because, Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton, to me, right now, if the Saints have an injury to their starting quarterback, and if Sean Payton does not go with Taysom Hill, which would be suicide, and he goes with Jameis Winston, they're still going to be a playoff team. In Tennessee, if Ryan Tannehill goes down, who's the quarterback?
I can pull up right now. I don't actually know that one off the top of my head. They probably don't. I would assume that someone – it is Logan Woods.
Yeah. So if you have a shot to make the playoffs, Buffalo, if Josh Allen goes down. So, I mean, what was it the Cowboys paid Andy Dalton? Like $3 million, where it could go to $7 million if you played? Yeah. So, I mean, if you spend $3 or $4 million on Andy Dalton, I think that's money pretty well spent just to save your ass. Like I said, if Dak Prescott goes down and you don't have Andy Dalton, you're probably done because you got to be able to put some points on the board in Dallas because you can't stop anybody right now. And I think what you have is because they have Dalton, they're going to start to get some of the defensive players back. They're still going to suck on defense, but they're not going to be as bad as what they are now. So I think right now it comes down to probably Philadelphia or Dallas. Washington, if they didn't pick Dwayne Haskins and they would have went with Andy Dalton, they would probably have 2 or 3 wins right now and be in first place.
Yeah, and we learned the value of backup quarterback last year when Ben Roethlisberger went down and it was Mason Rudolph who went in. And that showed you right there. That should have been a playoff team based on how well that defense was playing. But you had Mason Rudolph playing instead of a valuable quarterback. Look at New Orleans. They had Drew Brees go down, but Teddy Bridgewater came in and they went 5-0. I mean, that's the value of having a backup quarterback. And no one seems to have learned their lesson from last year at all.
Yeah, they never do. All right, so we're going to look at some surprises this year. Surprises so far, about a third of the way through the season. Let's look at the AFC East right now, Sam. Any surprises?
The one that I would say is somewhat surprising would be Buffalo just because of how good they are. Not that they are in place to win the playoff, in place to make the playoffs. I thought they were going to be a playoff team to begin with. But again, it's the Josh Allen thing. I had a lot of doubt about Josh Allen. We've expressed it on the show time and time again. He was one of my least favorite quarterbacks in the NFL. I thought he was not going to be a starter in the league in 3 or 4 years. They come out here and they're just playing phenomenal football. So to me, the Buffalo Bills are a surprise.
Yeah, and in 3 or 4 years, you'll probably be talking about how he's probably going to be a Hall of Famer someday.
You know what? If he takes the Patrick Mahomes route, you're absolutely right.
All right. To me, the surprising thing to me is this. I thought New England had a chance just because of Bill Belichick to win 8 or 9 games. But the thing that's really surprised me, Sam, is not the fact that they've won a couple games, but how they've won it. I think their defense has really surprised me because they lost a lot off that defense last year.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, even something like Hightower opted out of the year. I think they lost all their starting linebackers. Jamie Collins is in Detroit, Kyle Van Noy is in Miami. So they were really hurting at the time, and now they're performing at a high level. Those linebackers, they've replaced them with either cheap veterans or draft picks. And the defensive line's not been half bad either. So really, this is a team that has been surprisingly well-rounded. But I guess that comes down to a lot of coaching, though, right? I mean, the preparation New England is probably unlike any other in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think the other surprise, I don't really think it's a surprise, but I think the Miami Dolphins are going to come on here. I think the Jets are what we thought they would be. But I really think the Dolphins can make a run at that last wild card spot.
Well, yeah, and will they do it? I'm assuming you're talking about doing it with Ryan Fitzpatrick and not Tua Tagovailoa based on how well Fitzpatrick's played.
I don't think Ryan Fitzpatrick's that bad. I still would be playing Tua, but Ryan Fitzpatrick's played well, so you can't really bitch about it. But I would want to find out if Tua could do it or not. When we look at the AFC North, anything that surprises you?
I mean, it's got to be the Cleveland Browns, right? I mean, at 3-1. Because they're the Browns, they always find ways to screw it up.
4-1, Sam.
4-1, sorry. 4-1. I'm sorry. I'm not used to having to say the Browns are winning by that much. But really, I mean, it's got to be Cleveland. Because they usually are finding ways to screw things up. And so far, if they're just remaining dedicated to the running game, they will win 8 to 10 games easily.
I don't know. I think it surprises me the Ravens aren't that good. And I know people are going to say I'm nuts. But to me, I think there's a huge difference between the Ravens, the Chiefs, and the Bills. And I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are a surprise. Now, the problem is this. Is Chase Claypool, was that just a great game? Or is he going to end up being the number one receiver? And I think that, combined, of course, with Big Ben, if he can stay healthy or not, are the biggest questions there. We go to the AFC West, and Hunter has to be a surprise there for you since you thought the Broncos would be a playoff team.
Yeah, I mean, that's been surprising. I thought they'd be much better than they are right now. I mean, there's 2 things you can mention here. Really, it's the Raiders, because the Raiders seem legit so far at this point in the year. They've played fairly well. Derek Carr is performing, I think, outperforming what he's done mostly in recent history. And then, of course, Justin Herbert with the Chargers. I mean, if the Chargers could just close games, they could have 3 or 4 wins at this point.
Yeah, but that's almost every team on this list.
That's true. Quite a few of these teams have trouble with that.
Yeah. AFC South, I think, is what I thought it was. Tennessee's the best team. The Colts will make a run possibly at the playoffs, but I still say the only way the Colts make the playoffs is if Jacoby Brissett becomes the starting quarterback.
Yeah, because I think we saw it against Cleveland. Phillip Rivers is no longer that guy. He's now turned into not even a game manager. He's worse than that at this point. He's a turnover machine. You cannot rely on him to protect the football.
All right, let's go to the NFC. The NFC North. To me, when I look at it, it surprises me the Bears are 4-1. It surprises me not that the Packers are 4-0, but the Packers are as dominant a 4-0 as what they've been.
Yeah, well, I think this Aaron Rodgers turnaround. Like, I expected Aaron Rodgers to play better this year than they did last season, but I did not expect him to play this well. Aaron Rodgers right now is potentially heading for the best year of his career if he keeps up this track. That offense has been great, and the defense has been better than what they were last year.
Yeah, and Detroit's Detroit, so you don't expect much there. Minnesota, I'll still say it, Mike Zimmer gets fired, and I think he should be the next coach of the Cincinnati Bengals the day he does get fired. But Detroit never can surprise you when they're 1-3, Sam.
No, Detroit is Detroit. They'll lose close games. They'll build leads early and then lose them. Minnesota was a surprise for me. I expected them to have a bit of a drop-off because, I mean, they lost their top 3 or 4 cornerbacks. So I was expected they were going to fall off a little bit. But the amount of just how steep Kirk Cousins' decline has been this year and how badly they've been able to lose these games is just surprising to me. I thought they were a better coached, more well-organized program than this.
All right, the NFC East. I don't think it's surprising the Cowboys are first, the Giants are second, the Giants are last. I think the thing that's surprising is the Giants are 0-5 and are only 2 games out of first. And right now you've got the 1-3-1 Eagles, a half game out of first. So I think this division's a mess. If I had to pick it right now, it's Dallas or Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia has the better coach. I think they have the better quarterback. I think they probably do win this division. But I think this is a 2-team showdown. And I think the only thing disappointing here is the fact that all these teams are terrible right now.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of expected this, though, right? We knew it was going to be Philadelphia or Dallas trying to win this division.
I thought it would be like whoever won the division would be 9-7, maybe 10-6. I didn't think whoever won the division might be 7-9 or 6-10.
Yeah, I was going to say, we didn't expect them to be this bad. That's really what the only difference is here.
All right, let's go to the NFC South. The biggest surprise to me in the entire NFL has been the Carolina Panthers. I mean, the fact that Teddy Bridgewater is this good, that this defense is this good, that Matt Rule's having this much success in his first year with a team that was completely decimated and has lost Christian McCaffrey a few weeks ago, and they continue to win. To me, the biggest surprise in the NFL so far has to be the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, they're on a 3-game winning streak, and Teddy Bridgewater was playing great during that stretch. I mean, is it too far or too much to say that they have a really good chance of winning a wild card spot here?
I would say that it's not too big a stretch to say that they have a chance. And the way they're playing right now was to say they don't have a chance to win the division. Now, I do. Michael Thomas is going to come back, and Tom Brady's in Tampa. But I think Carolina, I mean, they can make a run at winning 9 or 10 games. I think from what we see right now, this is a really good defensive football team. And Christian McCaffrey will be back, correct?
Yeah, he's coming back this year. He'll be back.
So if he comes back and they're 500, and all of a sudden you throw him on that offense with Teddy Bridgewater playing well and a really good defense, I don't see why they can't make a run at the playoffs.
Well, we're going to learn a lot about them in the coming weeks. They play Chicago, I think, this coming weekend. Then they get the Saints, the Falcons, the Chiefs, and then the Buccaneers. So really the next 5 games are going to tell us quite a bit about who the Carolina Panthers are under Matt Rule.
Yes, I would say if they're sitting at 5-5 after those games, I think they've got a shot. And I think they can from what we've seen. I think the Saints and Buccaneers, I think the Saints, they need to get healthy. The Buccaneers offensive line has to play better, Sam.
Yeah, they got destroyed by Chicago. I mean, Khalil Mack had 2 sacks. Really, he should have had 3 or 4. There were a couple that were waved off there on just bad penalties. That line is not going to protect Tom Brady. He's not the kind of guy that can move around and escape that stuff. And the running backs are not great at pass protection right now. So he's in a situation where he needs to get some of his weapons healthy. Like Evans couldn't run entirely last game. He was hobbled the entire time. Chris Godwin didn't play. So you need to get healthy. But also that offensive line needs to get the pressure off of Tom Brady.
All right, next up, let's check out the NFC West, where last year's Super Bowl team, the San Francisco 49ers, now sit at the bottom of the division. To me, it's not a surprise when you consider how many players they've had get hurt. The big surprise to me here is the Los Angeles Rams. Not so much that they're 4-1, but the way they're doing it. I mean, they're one of the few teams that have held their opponents in 5 games under 100 points. They've scored 136. Jared Goff's played really well. And I don't think it's a stretch to say this, Sam. They're the best overall team in the NFC West. Now, they're not the best team in the NFC West because Russell Wilson kind of paper, rocks, and scissors that now does them just because he's there. But the LA Rams, I think it's safe to say, are going to be in the fray when we get to January.
Oh, yeah, they're going to be right up there. This is going to be a situation like we've had past couple of years where really there's a team that tops this division, then Seattle comes in second place. We'll send 2 teams to the playoffs, and we'll see how they fight it out. But really, the Rams could end up on the top of this division. The Seahawks, they have a losing record against Los Angeles the last couple of years. Even last year when I think they split 1-1. But even when the Rams are having difficulties, they still competed with the Seahawks every single time they played. I think this is a situation that actually, through the first 5 weeks, favors the Rams to win the division just because of how well they performed against the Seattle Seahawks in the past couple of years.
Well, I think when you look at it, I think a team like the Cardinals is going to have a hard time getting in because when you look at the NFC West, a 5-0 and a 4-1, you get the NFC South, you get 3-3-2s that all look pretty good. Of course, you get the NFC East, which is only getting 1 in. But with Chicago sitting at 4 wins, if they continue to play this well, you may have the 7th playoff team get in at 10-6.
Yeah, and if they did, that'd be phenomenal. And that'd be great for the playoffs to have mostly competitive teams minus whoever's coming out of the NFC East, obviously. But really, you're right. We could see a couple teams. We could see 10-win wildcard teams. And then, of course, a 4 seed from the East with 7 or 6 wins.
Yeah, and I think this is setting up so you won't have anybody worse than 9-7 in the playoffs except for the NFC East champion maybe, because the AFC's kind of stacked like that too. I mean, you look at the AFC North, they're going to get 3 teams in the playoffs the way it sits right now.
Yeah, and that's great for football to have that many competitive teams in there and not be having these 9-7 teams get in that really don't have a chance to make anything of their time. But you're right.
9-7 teams can. There's been 9-7 teams go to the Super Bowl. Been a few of them.
That's true. That's true. And Titans, I think last year were 9-7, I'm pretty sure. But
all right, trivia question. Who was the first 9-7 team to 9-7 regular season record to qualify for the playoffs and go to the Super Bowl?
That was a 6 seed, I'm guessing.
Well, no, because there were. I don't even know if there was that many teams in it back then.
Oh, but I'm not going to get this. It was.
You've got to get this if you're a football fan.
You got to add that if you're a football fan, part at the end there just to embarrass me.
If you're a grown ass man, you should know this. How about that?
That's even worse, honestly.
I know. That's why I did it.
I don't know.
Come on. The first 9-7 team to go to the Super Bowl were the 1979 Los Angeles Rams.
No, I didn't know that.
You know who quarterbacked that Rams team in Super Bowl 14?
Who was around back then?
Oh, my God. You don't even know who quarterbacked in Super Bowl 14 for the Rams?
No.
I thought you were a football fan, Sam.
I'm not an encyclopedia, Mike.
You don't have to be. I mean, it's pretty obvious who the quarterback in Super Bowl 14 for the Rams was. How many 1979 Rams can you name? Now, the thing that's mind-blowing to me is this, Sam. They played the Pittsburgh Steelers in the Super Bowl, and you still don't know who their quarterback was.
I know. I really learned a lot about the Steelers. I didn't focus on the Rams too much. That wasn't a team that was very interesting to me. I was following the Steelers. I was just happy we won that game. I know.
No, you're not, because you weren't even alive then, Sam.
Well, yeah, now I'm happy looking back. I know they won the game. I know that was Jack Youngblood's team. I know they had Cromwell was one of the defensive backs, I'm pretty sure.
Nolan Cromwell, number 21.
Yeah, he was very good. I do know that.
That's all you got is Nolan Cromwell. What about Wendell Tyler, Colin Bryant?
Never heard those names before in my life.
Isaiah Robertson, one of the great linebackers.
Isaiah Robertson. I've heard of Isaiah Robertson. I do know that one.
Come on, Sam. Who did they beat in the NFC Championship game in 1979 to get to the Super Bowl?
Dallas.
No. They did beat they upset the Cowboys in the divisional playoff game in 79 down in Dallas, but they beat Tampa Bay 9-0 in the NFC Championship game. That was the Tampa Bay team led by Doug Williams, Ricky Bell, Leroy Selman, Dewey Selman. But they actually won the game. They won on the road against the Cowboys, and then they won on the road against the Buccaneers. Because the Buccaneers beat Philadelphia in Dick Vermeil in the divisional playoff.
There you go. The more you know. I know some of those teams, some of those players from the Tampa Bay team. I know more of those Tampa Bay players, honestly, than the Rams ones.
That's messed up.
Maybe just a little bit.
Come on, Jackie Slater?
I know who Jackie Slater is, okay? I know some of these guys. You're saying them now.
Sarah?
No, not the second one.
Oh, God. All right.
Your opinion of me had dropped significantly throughout the show.
My opinion was already really low, so I wouldn't worry about it, Sam. Hey, 1979, you know who the Steelers beat to go to the Super Bowl, though, right?
Yeah, of course.
You're looking it up, Sam. Don't divert your eyes from looking at the screen.
All right, I'm looking directly at you. So it was 79. It would have had to have been Houston that year.
Who did they beat in the divisional playoff?
Who they beat in the divisional ones?
Yeah.
That's
It's the Miami Dolphins. You don't have to look it up. They beat the Dolphins 34-14. They beat Houston 27-13. The interesting thing is the last game of the season, I think they played on Monday Night Football against the Chargers and got beat like 35-7. And that's also it's also the same.
You need that wake up call.
Their first loss of that season, I think, was to the Bengals in Cincinnati. The Bengals beat them like 30, I think it was like 34-7, and the Steelers turned the ball over like 7 times in that game. It's one of my favorite games as a Bengal fan. Anytime we beat the Steelers.
Hey, you got to save that kind of stuff. But luckily, you haven't won a Super Bowl yet, though, since then. So
I don't see what that has to do with anything. It's not germane to this conversation.
All right, fair.
I mean, I kind of like suffering the misery with my team. You just like to live in the past with yours,
which is basically suffering and misery. You think about it.
So there you go. We're all in the same boat. But now you guys are 4-0, and we're still in better shape because we got Joe Burrow.
Yeah, that's right. You're going to turn around and win every game for the rest of the year, right?
Probably. It's the way it's looking to me.
He's been sacked 22 times already.
I know. What's your point? That means we're the best at that. We're the best at getting our quarterback sacked. What are you guys the best at in Pittsburgh?
Probably nothing, honestly, right now.
All
there
right.
you go. You got one more thing you need to do.
All right. Any other NFL news you want to talk about?
I just wanted to ask you, what was your opinion on Sean Payton benching Michael Thomas last night? Because he wasn't hurt. He was benched because he got into a fight during practice with one of the defensive backs.
Did he start the fight?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. It sounds like it was a sucker punch because it sounds like he's the only one who got suspended for the fight.
I don't know. Without seeing the fight, I couldn't tell you, but I would say this. Sean Payton's a good coach. Sean Payton wants to win. If Sean Payton thought it was best for the long-term health of his team to bench Michael Thomas, that's why he did it. Everybody will sit there and say, well, I'd hurt him for that game. But I'm telling you this, as a coach, Sean Payton's sitting there thinking that if I let this go, maybe this stuff tends to kind of fester and continue to happen. It's also something that if Michael Thomas sucker punched him and it was Michael Thomas's fault completely, you could lose your entire team if you allow him to play, because I know everybody thinks all these football players, they just want to win the game under any circumstances. But if you have somebody that's causing issues and you allow it to fester, sometimes that'll come back to bite you in the ass at the end.
Yeah, I think obviously if they had lost, we would have gotten a lot of criticism for it. But I think it's the right move to make in case where you have to keep the guys on the same page. And if you let someone like that go and keep walking around your locker room and be a superstar, give him a superstar treatment. I don't know if that would have meshed well with everyone else on the team.
No, it wouldn't have. I mean, it's not going to. I mean, nobody wants that to happen. You didn't hear any players complain about it, did you?
No, I don't think I heard anyone, any players talk about it.
The great thing is he made his point and he still won the game.
Yeah, and they get called.
The question is this: if they're 7-3 playing the 7-3 Bucks in Week 11, is he going to do it the same way? Because sometimes if you're a coach and you get an opportunity to do it for a game where you think you're going to win the game anyways, you do it. Maybe in other cases you wouldn't, but I would say this. The track record of Sean Payton is, I think he's a guy that generally does what he thinks is right, and I think that's what he did. And I don't know how you can complain at a coach for suspending a guy. Number one, when as a fan, you didn't see what happened, you don't know what happened. Sean Payton knows what happened. Sean Payton has won a Super Bowl. He's a damn good football coach, and if he thinks the best thing for his team is to bench maybe the best player on his team, I don't see how anybody can argue with that. And he still won.
Especially a lot of it was handled in-house. I mean, you still win. It obviously wipes out any questions. You don't have any complaints there.
But even if they would have lost, I mean, the thing is this. If you don't punish him and you win that game last night and then something happens later on in the year, I mean, in the end, you could end up really losing even though you won the game.
It's really, like you've talked about this before, it's really how your team is both mentally and physically going into the playoffs. And if you end up having this situation where you have a break in your locker room, I mean, that could really hurt you down the stretch, right?
Well, I think the one thing that strikes me the most is that when I talk to guys that played on great teams, they talk about how close-knit those groups were. If you got a guy that's throwing punches at each other, it's usually not a very close-knit group. Now, in the middle of training camp in 1980, when it was 100 degrees and you're running 2 or 3 a days, I can see how people get mad and throw punches. But I can tell you this, as a coach, if I have somebody on my team get in a fight, they're not going to be on my team anymore. It's that simple. In a fight in practice with a teammate is unacceptable no matter who you are, no matter what the reasons are.
But I think we saw a little bit of that with Earl Thomas earlier this year in Baltimore. I mean, they basically, after he got in a fight with Chuck Clark, they basically kicked him off the team.
Yeah, because one of the truest statements ever is you are only as strong as your weakest link. And if your weakest link is not only your weakest link, but he's your weakest mental link, that's an issue. To me, Michael Thomas throwing a punch at one of his teammates makes me question whether he is the best wide receiver in football. I mean, I watched Jerry Rice, and I hear all these new guys say, well, Terrell Owens was better, or Randy Moss was better. Yeah, physically, they might have been. But I never saw those guys doing playoff games and Super Bowls what Jerry Rice did. Jerry Rice was better than everybody else, not because he had the greatest hands or ran the greatest routes. He was the greatest because mentally, on and off the field, he was the greatest. I mean, I'm friends with Joe Kelly, who played for the 88 Bengals. He played, I think it was 11, 12 years in the NFL. And he came out to speak to my team the other day. And they asked him, who the biggest freak athlete he ever played against or was around. And he said, Bo Jackson. And the next name he threw out was Jerry Rice. Because he's like, man, I used to work out 8 hours a day in the offseason. I figured I live in L.A. I'm going to go, to Northern California and go work out with Jerry Rice. He said, I go to work out with Jerry Rice. He said, 20 minutes in, I'm tapped out, and I'm never going back there. He said, the way he worked and as hard as he worked, you just couldn't keep up with. And, I mean, everybody got to realize that when you get to the level of the NFL, everybody is a great athlete. The difference in the all-time greats is in their head. It's mental. Tom Brady and Joe Montana are the best 2 quarterbacks I ever saw because of one simple thing. They were the 2 most mentally tough quarterbacks I've ever seen. Russell Wilson, to me, great all-time quarterback, mentally tough. Brett Favre, Peyton Manning, not so much. I mean, Peyton Manning put up bigger numbers. He looked the part of the better quarterback than Tom Brady in the regular season. But when the playoffs came, mentally, Peyton Manning could be defeated. And he was usually defeated by Tom Brady. So I think people need to realize a lot of times it's not just what your body's like, it's what's between your ears and your ability to overcome things. And that would make me worry. And it makes you wonder why the Saints come up short every year when it looks like you're going to the Super Bowl. Maybe that's the reason. I'm not saying it's Michael Thomas in a nutshell, but maybe – we don't know what else has went on in locker rooms and practices with Michael Thomas that would lead to him being suspended for a game. And I don't think that this is a one-off where all of a sudden Michael Thomas sucker punched a dude. When you're 26, 27, and 28 years old and you sucker punch somebody, you've done that before.
Yeah, I mean, I would think he's been vocal in the past for certain situations where he's gotten maybe insulted a little bit quicker than I would think a superstar would. So Michael Thomas, he's a guy who needs to kind of toughen up a little bit. I mean, not be so sensitive to these kind of issues and really focus on being mentally, like I said, mentally the best player at his position. Because really, the guys who are quiet at the receiver spot, and they're the ones who get the work done a lot of times. You see the vocal guys like Antonio Brown or Odell Beckham. You see what happens to them in the long run.
Yeah, they go away with no Super Bowl rings. They may end up in the Hall of Fame because they put up outstanding numbers like Moss and Owens. But when it comes down to it, that Super Bowl, what was it, Terrell Owens or Randy Moss played against the Giants? He could have caught a ball and went for a touchdown. They'd have been undefeated. And the thing is this, if you put Jerry Rice on that team, Jerry Rice at the end of the game is going to will himself to make a play to win the game.
Yeah, because Moss really was not a huge factor in that outcome of that game. We talked about before when we ranked top 10 receivers.
Even though Larry Fitzgerald never won a Super Bowl against the Pittsburgh Steelers, 2 minutes left, he catches the ball over the middle and his ass is gone. Touchdown. He won them the Super Bowl. Now, the defense lost it after him and he never got another chance. But when he had a chance in the Super Bowl to make a play, he made the play. You know,
It's not just this.
Yeah, Randy Moss could have made a play. He didn't.
Yeah. It's not just for Larry Fitzgerald. It's not just the Super Bowl. I mean, every playoff from there to after. I mean, he got Green Bay Packers in the playoffs where he basically made that catch and went, I forget, it was like 60 or 70-something yards. And then they pitched it to him and he scores a touchdown. And he's coming through. He's been the Arizona Cardinals in the playoffs for the entirety of his time he's been there.
Yeah, so if there's any guy I would ever compare to Jerry Rice, it would be Larry Fitzgerald. And I think Larry Fitzgerald may be better than Jerry Rice. Don't know that he is. But, and I mean, the Super Bowls and the Super Bowl 23, where I don't remember if he won the MVP or not, but he should have. Jerry Rice, 12 catches, I think, for over 200 yards against the Bengals. That was basically the 49ers offense that day.
And that's really telling of like receivers, when they become the sole offense for a team, you still are able to win games just going through that one guy. That's really what the greatness is at the position. You see Calvin Johnson do it in Detroit. Obviously, they never had any playoff success. But even to get to 9 or 10 wins for Detroit is something. And Calvin would get double or triple team every play and still make those plays. Larry Fitzgerald in his prime would get double team and still make those plays.
How about this? So Jerry Rice was a guy that made everybody around him better. And, you know, it was hard to double team Jerry Rice because you had John Taylor on the other side. And if you look at it, Super Bowl 23, the Bengals double team Jerry Rice. John Taylor runs a post, splits between the two guys, catches the game-winning touchdown pass. I mean, that was a direct correlation because the Bengals were so afraid of Jerry Rice.
I don't think you see as many receivers do that nowadays. I really don't.
No, there aren't. I mean, they're a bunch of damn babies. I mean, the Cleveland Browns probably will never win as long as they got Odell Beckham on their team. The guys that can't.
The Browns have a lot of issues outside of Odell Beckham, too.
Well, see, the Browns don't have an issue. I think Kevin Stefanski's done a great job as head coach. I think Baker Mayfield is an average quarterback, but you can win with an average quarterback with a couple big-time playmaking receivers and the ability to run the ball. When's Nick Chubb coming back?
He was on IR last time I checked, the short-term one, not the long-term one. I think it's going to be a couple of weeks.
Yeah, they've got to have him to have a chance to do anything, I think. At 4-1, of course, they've got a good shot to make the playoffs. They can go below 500 and maybe still get in at 9-7. But they need to be able to make any kind of noise. They need Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt together. And Nick Chubb, I think, may be the best running back in football.
No, I'm right there with you. I've been a fan of Nick Chubb since he was at Georgia. I really think he was the guy who should have been a first-round pick in that draft class. And he'll probably, if he stays healthy, since he's had some health issues, he'll be the best running back from that draft class, better than Saquon, better than anyone from that group.
All right, Sam, you ready to wrap it up, or you got anything else?
No, I think that's about everything.
All right, guys, I want to remind you can follow Sam Teets at Sam Teets 33. You can follow me at Grueling Truth. Make sure you check out our show every day, 1 o'clock, Monday through Friday on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitch, Periscope. You can hear our podcast usually a couple hours after we do the live show on iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. And make sure you check out Replenishing Care Technologies, our main sponsor at acandt.com. So for now, for Sam Teets, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been watching and listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.